Hello folks, well a couple of weeks ago I showed you my Elton vinyl collection. I don't know how many vinyl LPs it contained, but this is my CD collection you're about to see in just a few minutes. And earlier today I counted these, and my Elton John CD collection totals as of today exactly 450 discs. They fill 4 of these deep file drawers. I'll just show you the first one. This is about 130 some odd discs here, and then I have these down here, and then 2 more, 1 and 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4 of these filing cabinet drawers. And just to sort of explain how I arrived at that number, I counted all copies of Elton's studio and live albums, singles, CD singles and EPs, best ofs and hits packages, bootlegs, gray market releases, privately pressed CDRs of rare recordings, and discs and multi-disc sets like box sets. And even if I happen to have more than one copy of the same album, which I do in many, many cases, of course, but like more than one copy of the same album on the same label, with the same mastering, pressed at the same location with the same matrix code, I counted those too. Although I seem not to have too many of those cases in here. There are maybe 2 or 3 examples of that where I have exactly the same thing, 2 of exactly the same thing. I didn't include in that total any DVDs or Blu-rays, any kind of video disc that we sometimes get in box sets or promotional packages, stuff like that. I also didn't count any various artists' kinds of releases, soundtracks, tribute albums, the kinds of projects to which maybe Elton contributed just 1 or 2 songs. I have sort of a separate section down here for that, which I'll show you in a little bit. So that's a different series, and I didn't count those in that 450 number. Spoken very much at all on this channel about CDs. I know that most folks in the vinyl community tend to favor vinyl, but I think many would agree that as time goes on, we collectors who prefer physical format are kind of all in the same boat, so to speak. And I'm not anti-digital at all. I was a teenager in the age of the CD, so even when I was a big vinyl collector back in high school, I still bought things on CD, especially Elton John stuff, because his newer stuff anyway wasn't available on vinyl back then. My CDs have always been a big collection. I also should note that I recently received approximately 100 Elton, mostly Elton, but also some non-Elton, or just, I could say, Elton-related CDs from a viewer, my friend Michael, who lives next to Kings Island, and those discs are included in here and are accounted for. I actually filmed myself opening those boxes, and you'll see very soon those unboxing videos. But for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to focus too much on those discs, because you'll be seeing those in other videos very soon. In fact, I've received several generous gifts from viewers. I certainly don't expect viewers to send me things, but some have. And I very much appreciate that. And my plan, well, for a while now, my plan has been to do a separate episode that focuses on those items. And anyway, just one last thing before I get going. I know well that this is not the ideal way to store CDs. I used to have these great-looking CD shelves or media shelves. I bought them when I lived at my last place. And those could hold all my Elton and most of my non-Elton CDs. I had other, additional shelves for the overflow. Those were bookshelves. But those CD shelves were not well built, apparently. I thought they were, but they broke apart during the move and couldn't be fixed. So for now, this is kind of this drawer method is what I'm doing, just for the Elton CDs anyway. I have about 10 banker's boxes of non-Elton CDs in storage, and I look forward to getting proper shelving for all my CDs one day. The general concept is I'll file them in chronological order of release, left to right. Obviously, the top drawer is the earliest, and then goes all the way down to the most recent stuff in the bottom drawer. This first drawer goes from 1967 to 1974, and then drawer 2 goes from 1975 Captain Fantastic to To Be Continued in 1990. And then drawer 3 goes from 1990 to 2003. And then the bottom drawer is, 2004. So Peachtree up to, last one I have is Britney Spears. These are all various artists' things here, soundtracks, tribute albums, different projects. A lot of those did come actually from Michael's collection. I do have box sets down here. And I've kept, in most cases, I've kept the discs in the box set. So here's the Madman box set. Here's the British To Be Continued. I'll drop in a picture of what that looked like because I took photos on the day I unboxed it. This is my Goodbye Elvick Road Super Deluxe, and then Rare Masters I have down here. Slip cases and things I don't want scratched up I have down here. So I have some slip cases there. These are all my 2019 Japanese SHM editions, which are now they're getting more and more difficult to find, but they sound great. I love them. What else do I have down here in this bottom drawer? Another Rare Masters. That I could probably, because, well, I don't want to get it scratched up, but this I could probably file in somewhere in the top drawer because it is the shape of a standard CD. I just don't like when you file things that are too large or not standard CD dimensions and they stick out, and that just makes them a candidate for getting nicked and damaged. And then down there, those are DVDs. Yeah. Let's put the stuff back. So that's basically what I keep in the bottom drawer. For each version or edition of each title or album, I'll then file those in chronological order of release left to right. So this is sort of, again, Dick James demos, other sort of pre-Empty Sky stuff, then Empty Sky, then the Elton John self-titled begins here, goes all the way up to here. What I've done with the SHMs is that I've taken the discs out and I've put them in these slim style jewel cases just to, so I can play them without having to fuss around with the paper sleeves and damage them. And then we get through some of the Reg Dwight sessions stuff, Nick Drake, Warlock session stuff. Then we get Tumbleweed. Tumbleweed goes up to here. And then we get into, I filed compilations at their date of earliest release. Like if they're a mixed bag, like Lady Samantha, which was originally released in 1974. I know it's got stuff on it from earlier than that, but it as a compilation was originally released on cassette and 8-track only in 1974. So even though this is a CD edition from the 80s, and it's using artwork from the reissue from 1980, I filed it in 1974. Rare Masters is filed in under 1992 because that's when it was released. However, compilations or archival releases that contain recordings all from the same kind of sessions or concert or the same period, same specific period, I've filed them actually according to the date of recording, not the date that they came out. And a lot of bootlegs get filed that way because bootlegs tend to be focused on certain sessions or certain specific concerts, like the Central Park concert. I have a bootleg of that's filed under September 1980. With CD singles, you don't have to worry too much about CD singles in the early years. But you start seeing a lot of singles appear. This drawer, this is 1990 to 2003, the age of the CD single. And even though in a lot of cases, lead singles will predate the official release of the album, what I do is I'll always file the album first, and then the singles will follow in the orders that all the order that all the singles were released. Like with the Big Picture, well, maybe the Big Picture is not the best example. Made in England's a good one. The Believe single predated the release of the album, but I have my different copies of Made in England here. And then I have Believe, and then Made in England was the second single, and then Blessed, and then Please, and on and on. And the very first Elton CD I ever got was actually the very first CD by anyone that I ever got, and it was my 1990 US MCA Special Products. MCA Special Products edition of Victim of Love. What an album to get as your very first CD. And this is the one that had an indexing problem. Whether you get the American copy or the Canadian copy, there was an indexing problem between tracks 4 and 5. But yeah, this was it. And I still have it. And I remember getting that. I'd never seen a CD before. It was Christmas 1991 I got that. And I now have, you can see by the spines, I now have that one. I have a slightly later American MCA issue of that, and then I have the Canadian, and they all have the same mastering, incidentally. It's funny I should be talking about Victim of Love. This is not exactly the album that everyone is so interested in. Here's the original UK Rocket copy of the album. And looks to me like it was pressed. I don't think it was actually, I don't think copies were available until the late 1980s anyway. And it looks to me like this was, oh, M&L. Okay, so this was actually one of the last copies pressed in Germany before the remaster came out in 2003. I date this to about 1999, actually. And I've never understood two things about this. Why does the DJM symbol appear on this? Okay, Victim of Love was never released on DJM Records. It was Rocket in the UK and Europe. And the other thing that confuses me, and this is sort of a joke among a lot of collectors, is why is track 3, whose title is supposed to be Born Bad, why was it printed on all copies from the late 80s until the late 90s? Pork wad. Go figure. Someone in the design department was either drunk or having a little joke. I don't know. Long boxes. I do remember that this came in a long box, and I saved it for a couple of years, but it just got lost and then damaged. I found it, and I found it damaged, so I had to get rid of it. I didn't really have too many long boxes, but it's important. I think it's important to remember that for some of these, anyway, there would have been long boxes, and those long boxes were part of these discs' original packaging. And some of them may have been worth saving if I'd had the chance. One really good example is the 1985 MCA issue of Tumbleweed Connection, which is, by my calculations, the earliest CD edition of Tumbleweed Connection available anywhere. And this one often, it confused me at first, and it's confused other collectors. And the question always is, well, why did they change the cover? You know, if later issues had the original cover, what was MCA trying to accomplish by doing this? And I think the answer is that there was originally a long box. There was, and that long box reproduced the original cover and back panels of the LP sleeve. And the idea was you took this out of the long box, and just as we opened the gatefold in the original vinyl issue and saw this, you take this out of the long box and you see this. And I'm not going to take the booklet out, but there are illustrations in this specific edition that are unique to this edition of the album, that were not used in the original LP and were not reproduced in any later version of Tumbleweed Connection on any format. So they're unique to this 1985 Japan for US MCA issue of Tumbleweed Connection. I'm interested in the material similarities and differences between different editions of the same album on, well, in this case, it's compact disc. I'm also interested in the sonic differences, and not just, which masterings sound better or worse than others, but also I like using open source, sonic analysis applications like EAC and Spec, and programs like that to test and measure things like peak values for each track, dynamic range, the spread of different frequencies. So if you don't want to leave it to just your own ears, you can get kind of, you know, pseudo-scientific about it and analyze the sonic properties of your CDs. And it's fascinating because you find that while some editions have very different and often unique masterings, many editions of the same album, even from different decades and or different parts of the world, will have identical mastering. It's useful for other collectors to know in case there's a particular mastering of a specific album and it was cloned for a later edition that's easier to find. Like, I'll give you an example. This one, the earliest edition of Captain Fantastic on compact disc anywhere was the, and I think this dates from about 1984-85. This is the European one, yeah, Polygram, West Germany. This happens to be a copy that was pressed in the UK, but it was originally released by Polygram in West Germany in 1984. And a lot of collectors will say, you know, this is the best sounding compact disc copy of Captain Fantastic out there. So you go to eBay and you see people paying ridiculous prices for that sometimes. I've seen people pay upwards of 50, 60 American dollars for that. However, Polydor in 1992 cloned that edition, the 1984 West German edition, for its North American edition of the album. And so they're sonically identical. So if you live in North America and you want to hear the highly coveted West German mastering of Captain Fantastic, well, if you just absolutely need a copy from 1984 from Europe, then yeah, pay 30, 40, 50 bucks for it. Or you can go down to your Goodwill and find this for $2. Sonically, the discs are different labels, but they use the same mastering. The discs are sonically identical. So I find it kind of useful to run those kind of tests and trace the lineage of different masterings and how they sort of moved around and were cloned for some releases and not for others. You know, and as I always say, mastering matters. Sometimes the right mastering of an album will open that album to you in a way that no other copy or mastering has done before. Like the example I think I've given before, where's my Rock of the Westies section? This is the mastering of Rock of the Westies that really opened the album up to me. This is the 2011-2012 Audio Fidelity Gold audiophile version, and it just sounds fantastic. It came with a slipcase. The slipcase is down below, but it's my favorite sounding copy. So I have quite a few Rock of the Westies. This is the original MCA issue from 1987, Japan. Manufactured in Japan for the US market. This is a Canadian copy that came along around 1990. It's basically the same mastering. What is this? This is the UK DJM copy, which I think was released the same year as the Japan for US. This is the Polydor. Sometimes I have more than one Polydor, but they're not exactly the same. I think this is American. It's an American club copy, and this is a Canadian stock copy, I believe. And the great thing about Polydors, by the way, is that whenever you're collecting Elton John on CD, a Polydor is a Polydor is a Polydor. Sometimes club editions of a particular CD edition of an album, a club copy will have different mastering, and it won't be as good. But in the case of Elton John, whether you have a Canadian copy, whether you have an American copy, whether you have a stock copy, whether you have a record club copy, the artwork was always the same, and the mastering was the same. So, like I always like to say to other collectors, a Polydor, when it comes to Elton John, a Polydor is a Polydor is a Polydor. Sometimes it's not a mastering issue, it's a matter of, it's a mix issue. I've mentioned in previous videos that 171170, back in 1971, there were two different mixes. You had the original UK mix, which was used on all the original DJM copies And then you had in the United States and Canada a different mix. And the UK mix was done by Clive Franks. The North American mix for Uni Records was done by Dave Henschel. And the very first issue on compact disc of 171170 was the 1988 MCA issue. And you open it up, and it looks just like those budget label, those late 80s budget label MCA issues. We call these plaid backs. So you open it up, and it looks like these plaid backs usually do. You have this sort of pink and blue budget label ad here, and you have a silver disc. But then, that was 1988. But then, a little less than 2 years later, in late 89, early 90, along came this. And it's like, okay, so Matt, what's the big deal about this? So, okay, so later copies of the MCA issue had blue on them. Big deal. Well, it is a big deal. In this case, they screwed up. They used for the first 4 tracks, so the side 1 tracks, they used the US mix. And for the side 2 tracks, the second half of the album, they used by accident the Clive Franks UK mix. So you get half US mix, half UK mix. This one attempted to correct that mistake, okay, by releasing everything as the same mix, only it was the UK mix, not the US mix. Now, I happen to prefer, of the 2 original mixes, I happen to prefer the UK mix, so I'm happy with this. But, yeah, the whole thing is the UK mix. Like I said, these were the earliest CD copies of 171170. The first British or European copy was the 1992 DJM, and it was basically the same thing as this. You get half the tracks. The first half of the album is the US mix. The second half of the album is the UK mix. And you might look at that and you might say, oh my goodness, wasn't that charming? They made the disc, rather than making it silver, they made it a nice bronze. No, it was not designed this way. This, back in 1992 when it was pressed, was actually a silver disc. UK, which was the plant at which this and many Elton John CDs were pressed in the UK in the early 90s, had a bit of a problem with the glue that kept the 2 acrylic layers of the compact disc together. It reacted badly with the sulfuric content in the paper used for a lot of the CD booklets. And the glue began to turn in color. And so a lot of these PDO discs have this bronze look. Many of them will play, many of them don't. This copy will play somewhat, but luckily for me, the 1992 Polydor, North American Polydor, was a clone. So I don't need to find an unbronzed copy of the DJM copy of that. The Polydor was a clone. What I'm going to do, just to sort of close out this video, is scan the spines of all these. There isn't time to discuss every one of them. Keep in mind there are future videos. But if you see anything in this collection that interests you, please let me know. You ask the question in the comments and I'll maybe give you a bit more information about it. But, okay, so these are, like I said earlier, these are the old Dick James Demos bootlegs. They were released on Yellow Dog Records, and I have some doubles of those. There are actually only 3 volumes. I had 1 copy of each originally, and then I started buying lots of CDs. I ended up with 2 copies of Volume 2, and then after I got Michael's boxes, I now have 2 copies of Volume 1, 2 copies of Volume 3, and 3 copies of Volume 2. So I'm going to have to... I really don't need that many copies, so I'm going to have to figure out what to do with those. So I have Zippo, Bread and Beer Band. That's a bootleg. I'll talk about that in a separate video. That's a really interesting release. I have all my Empty Skies. I showed those before. Elton John, I showed those before. I'll erase those. Oh yeah, I do have shm-cds filed in here, and those are part of that 450 count. So that's the multi-channel shm-cd of the Elton John album from 2004. I also have, I think this is from 2012 or 2013. This is the not multi-channel, it's the original stereo mix of the album, but that's shm-cd as well. And then the SHM. Then I have, yeah, the Tumbleweed. I have gray market releases, I said before. This is not an authorized release, but I don't think it qualifies as a bootleg either. This is on the London Calling label. This is part of Elton's Fillmore West gig from November 1970, just shortly before he did the 171170 album. Same thing, I have Cleveland, one of his Cleveland shows. Madman Shakes Tokyo on Moonchild. I won't make this all about showing you the bootlegs, but the bootlegs are sort of the ones that I get most excited about. This is a 2-disc boot of a concert he did in Japan in October 1971. Then over here, I guess my copies of Madman. This is the 1985 Japan for USMCA. And then I have the West German by Polygram. It appears I don't have the DJM UK by Nimbus, but that's okay. 2 copies of the Plaidback, 1 American, 1 Canadian. Except for the Mobile Fidelity issue, which is here. They was all pretty much the same mastering until the Classic Years issue. This is my Honky Chateaus. Sorry for the shaky camera. I'm using a gimbal here, but it's tough because I can only use one hand. Those are my Don't Shoot Me's. Those are all my Yellow Brick Roads. Interestingly, before 1995, before the Classic Years remaster came out in 1995, there were really only 2 masterings, CD masterings of Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. You had the original CBS Japan mastering, which came out in 1983, and then the later copies done by JVC Japan for MCA, which did not have illustrated backs, but these sort of red or pink backs. Those were the same mastering. The UK and German DJM copies, they used the same mastering. There's the Japanese DJM, same mastering. This one I used to call Big Yellow, and it's the last of the Canadian MCA issues, and it had a yellow back. It took me a long time to get that one. So these are all the same mastering. As is the single disc 1992 Polydor issue. All the same mastering. But the 1989 Mobile Fidelity audiophile copy, that's a different mastering. And I'll tell you right now, when it comes to the digital masterings of the original stereo mix of the album, this one's my favorite. I just love it. It's very warm, very dynamic. This is the Classic Years. I'm spending a bit of time with Yellow Brick Road because I know that's a lot of people's favorite album, or one of their favorites. This is the 3-disc 30th anniversary edition. So 2 hybrid SACD CDs and then a DVD. And this is the 2019 Japanese SHM edition single disc, which sounds really good too. I love the multi-channel mix of Yellow Brick Road. Oh, I do. So these are my Caribous. Greatest Hits. I don't have too many copies of Greatest Hits. This one is the DCC Classics, mastered by Steve Hoffman. I got this one for Christmas a few years ago. This is worth the hunt and worth the money if you can find that. Okay, so going drawer number 2. Captain Fantastic's Rock of the Westies, Here and There, Blue Moves, Greatest Hits Volume 2. This one called Fine China. This was one of the first Elton bootlegs I ever got. This is a bootleg of the Wembley Arena show he did in late 77. And it's not a bad sounding bootleg. It's, what was the label for that? What label put that out? Big Music. That was an Italian bootleg label. Different copies of A Single Man. these 3 originals I have. What's this? This is, okay. So this is the earliest CD copy of this to be had anywhere was released in 1985-86 and was made and mastered by Polygram in Germany. And so there is the purple and orange train label. This is a slightly later copy, pressed by PMDC in France. And this sounds fantastic, this original issue. And this is, yeah, so one of these I bought myself. One of these came from one of Michael's boxes. So these are all the original Rocket mastering of a single man. These are all sonically identical. I really don't need 3. I'll keep the purple and orange train rocket and one of the French PMDC full silver face discs. But at some point I'll have to part with one of the 2 silvers. This is the original Rocket Japanese, which I think was released in 1990 and is a unique mastering. It didn't clone the Polygram mastering. It is its own mastering. This is the original MCA issue from 1988. It's a Canadian copy, but it uses the American mastering, and it is its own mastering. So the Rocket was a unique mastering, Japanese Rocket was a unique mastering, and then this was unique as well. And then I have the Classic Years Remaster, which has the bonus tracks. And those are great bonus tracks, but I don't know. I debate in the comments whether or not you like bonus tracks on reissues of CDs. This bootleg is, I've shown it before. This one was a score and a half for me because I got it from a thrift store. And I don't think they know what they had, and it's very hard to find. This is the original Single Man in Moscow bootleg, which came out in 1994, and is the Moscow concert. Only, like I said in the other video, like I said before, it's the full show rather than just selections of, but I do have the official release here, both discs. Okay, Victim of Love, 21 at 33. These are my copies of the CD copies of the Fox. I only have 4. I have an original Rocket, UK Rocket. I have 2 copies of the 1992 MCA reissue. One I got from Michael. This one I got when I was about 13, 14. It did not come with this purple inner tray. I got that at a store downtown when I was in high school. And I saw it. They were selling different colored jewel cases, these translucent inner trays, all these different colors. And I thought, man, that would look sharp on my Fox CD. So I bought it. And it's, I don't usually mod CDs like that, but I think it looks great. The only thing is, it's over the years, the teeth have gone in this sort of center spindle. And I don't think I'm going to find another one. So I'm just going to have to learn to suffer. But I think that looks really, really sharp. And then that's the 2003 remaster, which I got in London. And then I have an original Jump Up. Then my Jump Ups continue over here. I have the MCA reissue, and then the Classic Years remaster. And then I have, these are my 2 Loafer Zeros. Have quite a few of those. And then Breaking Hearts. And then Ice on Fire. So this is the original UK Rocket Ice on Fire. Contains the longer versions of Satellite and Wrap Her Up. There's a rumor that's been floating around the Elton John collector universe for years that those longer versions were not released until 1998 when the Classic Years remaster appeared. But no, those longer versions originate on the UK and only, well, on the Rocket, the original Rocket editions of the album, whether they were sold in the UK and Europe or Australia or wherever. If it was the original Rocket issue, they had those longer versions. This is a Geffen. This is an MCA reissue from the early 90s, and then this is the remaster. Leather jackets. I have 4 copies of leather jackets. I'm not even going to talk about those. Live in Australia. Greatest Hits 3. Red Strikes Back. Keeping with the Past. And now we start to get into some of the first CD singles. I think I missed as far as I know, the earliest CD single in the Elton John catalog was the CD single for the live version of Candle in the Wind. There were 4 tracks on that, and it came in a card sleeve. I have the card sleeve stored elsewhere, but I put the disc in one of these things, and that mix of Candle in the Wind is the rare single mix you can't get many places. Sleeping with the Past. Have some CD singles for that one. Oh, To Be Continued. This is another one. I have the British To Be Continued, but I don't have the discs. The discs are still in the box. I have a second copy of To Be Continued on CD, which is sitting in another part of this room. This is another example of how I customized inner trays to complement the album artwork. So, and of course you get this as a puzzle. Oops. And I mean, it looks really cool in a standard CD case, but I think it looks even better when in these modified cases that I gave them with the translucent yellow inner trays. That was drawer number 2. Drawer number 3. Yeah, very early 90s, and then I was talking about mastering earlier. Eventually, albums began to show uniform mastering across all territories, across all labels, and I think Duets was the first one where, like, this is a UK rocket, this is an American MCA, this is a Canadian MCA. Okay, even if I got the Japanese version, it would have the same mastering too, I'm sure. These 3 have the same mastering. The One was the last Elton John CD where the mastering was not standardized. So this is the UK copy of the One, and the disc had that kind of design on it. And then you have the North American MCA version, where the disc was blue, and the mastering was different. And if you must know, I prefer the UK mastering of that one. And then this is that's the classic years remaster, and then this is the single. I have 2 copies of that. The last song, Simple Life. It's worth collecting singles, I think, because sometimes you get mixes that are unique to the singles. Like Simple Life had a unique mix. It's edit, but it's actually a different mix. Completely different mix. And it is shorter. And I prefer the single mix of Simple Life to the album mix. Here's one. I'm not really showcasing a lot of this stuff, but I'm not sure how many folks know that On Dark Street was released as a promo single in, I think, early to mid 1993, and there was a J card designed for it for slim style jewel case and everything, but it was never released commercially, only promotionally. Then I got Duets and the singles from Duets. Lion King, Made in England, although I've showed those already. Flip it over. I want to show you this. This is a bootleg that was kind of like a grail for me for many years. Because before Jewel Box, it was the only disc you could get, compact disc, that collected non-LP B-sides from 76 all the way to about 82. And when you play the CD, you can hear that these are needle drops, and then they applied a little bit of noise reduction to get rid of the surface noise. But it's a pretty good sounding collection of non-LP B-sides and rare non-LP A-sides like Les Aveux with France Gall. I have 2 copies of it, actually. I have, that's an original copy, and then this is, that's an original, and then this is a later version that I think is actually a pirate copy of a bootleg. I don't think Mighty Fishy Records actually made this one. They made this one. But my point is this. I bought my first of these two copies just weeks before it was announced that Jewel Box was going to be released. And after I paid a lot of money for that copy, I realized that I was going to get all these songs in master quality finally anyway. But it's nice to have these kinds of things, if only because they have, you know, academic value. That's not an official Elton John release, but it's part of the Elton John story. And it also chronicles the fan demand for these songs on some modern digital format. Here's another one. I forget how I think I bought this online. I got it in a lot. This was just basically songs from Elton's career and was circulated promotionally by Rocket to commemorate his 50th birthday in 1997. What else? Okay, Big Picture. Getting into the early 2000s here. West Coast, the singles from West Coast. Two different versions of Greatest Hits 1970, 2072. Okay, let's just get down here. This is getting to be a long video again. Yeah, and then, whoops, Peachtree Road, Peachtree Singles, Captain the Kid. How many versions of Captain the Kid do I have? This is the original British Special Edition, which, though not an shm-cd, was marketed in an shm-cd Super Jewel case. Go figure. This is an Australian copy. This is a Canadian copy. This was promotional. This was a live excerpts from a performance he did around that time. But that's not Captain the Kid. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What was the... Oh, this is a Barnes & Noble. This is a US copy. You get all the original artwork and everything, but it's was sold in a card sleeve. It's not a digipack, it's a card sleeve, so the discs are wedged in cardboard envelopes. This is the EU Special Edition. And you know what? If you're going to settle just for one copy of the Captain the Kid, okay, on CD, avoid these. This is the one you want. This comes with a bonus DVD, interview DVD, and Elton, it's gold. Elton and Bernie talk about their careers. They talk about the different experiences that influenced the writing of these songs. It's almost a full hour. It reminds me a lot of the Two Rooms documentary, only it's, 16 years later, and they're talking specifically about these songs, but it's just a fabulous DVD. Portions of those interviews were available around the time of this album's release on eltonjohn.com, but they seem to have disappeared from the website. So if you want to see them now, and they don't seem to be on YouTube either, if you want to see them now, seek a copy of this. And I don't know, I can't speak for all copies, but the DVD that came with this is a Region 0 DVD. So I can, even though this was manufactured in the EU, I can put the DVD in my North American player and watch it. So that's it. That's pretty much it. This is a rather spontaneous and haphazard tour of my collection, but again, if you see anything and you have more questions about it, then let me know. I'll try and answer your questions in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. I appreciate all the support that I get, and there are, of course, many more videos to come.